Hi, my name is Piotr and I would like to welcome you to Secure by Design approach in medical sector. In my presentation, I'm going to speak about multiple areas where Secure by Design would help organizations in avoiding incidents. So in my presentation, I'm going to focus on showing you the fallacies that do happen in cybersecurity. I'm going to show you the key principles of Secure by Design, and then I'm going to apply those principles to real world situations where specific incidents did happen, and using Secure by Design could have helped avoiding these incidents from happening. So I believe this will give you some guidance and some ideas how to improve the processes in your organizations so you can help software engineering teams with solving specific security problems. So let's get started and let me show you how to get with Secure by Design. My name is Piotr and I run a company called appsecure.com. I also have defended a PhD in the field of law, focused on privacy by design. In my business, I glue together cybersecurity, data protection, and software engineering, both from legal perspective and highly technical perspective. So this way, I am able to support various organizations with audits, advisory, and training in those fields of expertise. This is why I also have decided to present on this specific topic. So let's get started with the presentation and let me show you the key fallacies which will lead to the need of Secure by Design. Have you heard any of these cybersecurity fallacies before? We are in the cloud, so we are well protected. Minimal controls are sufficient. My data is not valuable to hackers. Our IT department is very security conscious. We have cybersecurity insurance if anything goes wrong. These fallacies may have been heard by you and your colleagues on different perspectives, such as you've been the auditor or you've been an employee of known corporate environment. You may have heard these and many more before in various environments, from small businesses even to large corporate environments. And these fallacies and these mistakes are being made by many companies still. So this is why it is important to take a look what could be done so the mindset is shifted to completely different area and to completely different strategy to cybersecurity. With this shift, you're going to avoid various simple incidents, so this will help your team and your company grow to a point where you get much more resilience around specific errors that could be made while engineering software. So in order to get out of the fallacies that you hear, you could potentially think about using the by design approach. So historically, in the 90s, there was privacy by design concept created by Dr. Anne Kavokian. With this concept as a set of simple principles, companies who were working on a software products could follow specific set of principles which made it so much easier to prevent them from failing to deliver privacy in their solutions. This had a huge impact because the companies which did follow those strategies uh, were more likely to succeed even financially because they could have avoided specific privacy and software engineering challenges in the early start of the project, which made the solution deliverables much more cheaper. And to add more, this has become an actual regulation. So in 2018, organizations were legally required to do and apply data protection by design. So that's an improved approach to privacy by design, which is embedded into our legal system. And this also leads to the secure by design approach. However, it is not specifically embedded into law directly as secure by design. It does exist well as part of data protection by design. In the future, it may become the standard of protecting and adding security layer to organization defaults. So this also implies the ethics by design and other methodologies such as safe and sustainable by design or success by design. So with those strategies, with at least one of them, you may teach your team to think as early as possible about privacy and security and ethics in terms of AI when you build software products. And I'm going to present to you the principles of secure by design and what secure by design is by definition. What is secure by design? Basically, secure by design is a series of principles which support tech products. So your software solutions are built in a specific way so they can include a series of protections against typical and known threats. So this way you can harden your security of the product that you're providing to your customers. And this way your software, your infrastructure, and other connected devices can get to a specific point where certain risks are not risks to your organization anymore. So this is why it's important to understand that this is only a guide, a series of principles. So specific tactics implied from these principles should be applied to the whole process of the software development lifecycle. This way, your organization can achieve, let's say, secure by design state. It doesn't mean it will be protected against every threat, but it will increase the level of resilience that you may actually look to achieve. Secure by design principles are divided into two groups. One which was created in the US, and the second one which were created in the UK. So the first group is a set of three principles which are the foundation of secure by design. And the priority there is to focus on the ownership, accountability, and transparency, and making sure that all of this can be supported by the leadership. So this summarizes all the principles in the US. And what does it mean? It basically means that you as an organization have to take an ownership to support your customer in reaching the goal of achieving security outcomes. This means that it's on you to provide the hardening, strong defaults, additional security layers to your product so the customers will be able to use it by default. So it won't require any additional activities or even paying for security features to achieve the secure by design state. The transparency side of the principles relates and connects directly to making sure that you're compliant and auditable from the software perspective. This means that basically you reporting the security vulnerabilities is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of understanding what is in your code and what can get improved. But this cannot be achieved without the support of the leadership. So, on top of the expertise that you have, you need to get the right level of support to achieve all of these goals. So, to make sure that secure by design can be embedded into your organization, you need to establish multiple assurance programs, procedures, and policies which will support the ongoing process of secure by design. And what you need to remember, this is not a one and done process. This is a type of process that needs to be repeated and needs to be continuous to make sure that your software solution will provide the right customer value to your customers. Let's learn what are the principles in the UK. Well, they are quite similar to the US ones. However, there's more of them, but they fully overlap with each other. Number one principle is connected to creating responsibility for cybersecurity risk. This means that it directly refers to making sure that there's transparency and accountability created inside the organization for the cybersecurity risk. And if we link this with the second principle, like source secure technology products, this means that making sure we're transparent and accountable in terms of adding the third party dependencies, additional vendors, we can basically work towards building that level of transparency and compliance. For example, we can create an automated scans to deliver information on the vulnerabilities that do exist in the dependencies. The next thing is to adopt risk-driven approach. Risk-driven approach is a requirement directly included in the GDPR. And also, this will be included, or actually is included, in cybersecurity regulations, which as a result would require your organization again to take responsibility and take the accountability and transparency around understanding risks. And as a next step, you need to design usable security controls and build in detect and response security processes. This fully connects to the support and the need of inclusion of your executives inside the security processes. Having that level of accountability and support from the executives will help you actually achieve security outcomes. And this way, your team can continue working towards designing flexible architectures, minimizing the attack surface by understanding various threats and risks to your software products and your organization. And this will imply the need for building the full multi-layer security, which means that as a result, when you have all of that, so you have tech and processes, you will be able to build the continuous assurance. So you can kind of think of ISO approach to plan, do, check, act cycle. So this cycle will make your organization run in a repeated manner, so it's much easier to self-improve in the area of security. And the last point is to make changes securely. When some of these principles might not directly relate to the ones which were provided in the US, but US Secure by Design guidebook includes a series of tactics, which means that these tactics also refer to making sure that you take the risk-based approach, you minimize the attack surface, you also focus on multi-layer security, and you repeat the whole cycle. So both strategies, both groups of principles will help you organize the whole secure by design approach. In this section, I'm going to show you some examples around security issues in the medical field that did happen in the UK market. The first example refers to MedSec company, and this company allowed to make medical related bookings through an online form. And when a person would make a booking, they would share relevant medical data to a healthcare professional. The whole process, a researcher has discovered a bug in the API, and this bug has potentially existed for about 6 years. And what was the error? The error did specifically allow any user to download or access patient data. This implies an error in the object level authorization process, which means that any specific user could access potentially any data of any other patient. And this was sent as an issue to the organization and was eventually fixed within 48 hours. And from the company, what they said is that they insisted that there was no evidence that any data was accessed. They say they've been transparent and reported the issue to the regulators, and that independent cybersecurity team did confirm that their systems are secure. The issue here is that potentially there was no accountability and transparency to detect uh, unauthorized behavior of the end user. So this means that potentially the company didn't have enough data or enough logs to identify if there was any unauthorized access to the data. This means that they didn't have any processes, or the processes that did exist weren't as effective as they should be in the first place. What does it mean? Basically, this means that the code had endpoints which didn't have enough authentication or authorization levels. There was potentially no object level permissions, and this means that in connection to those issues, lack of accountability and transparency through lack of logs or not enough security information led to the situation where it was impossible to detect that there was unauthorized access. From secured by design perspective, this means that the company has missed some opportunities that could fix those issues, which from technical standpoint are pretty simple. So let's take a look what could be done when it comes to the code and potential identification of such issues. So in the first slide, I'm showing you how this could be detected. So from the software engineering perspective, you can read, for example, the OpenAPI spec file to understand what endpoints do you have within your application. Then you can do some automation around this and collect all potential endpoint information. And then, as a next step, you can get the list of endpoints. And as a next step, using this list, you could perform some requests. So in this simple code example, you can perform two types of requests. You can focus on making GET requests as an unauthenticated user, and also you can do some testing with user who is authenticated, but this user has only standard level of permissions, which means that the user should not be able to access every endpoint or every data set. In the end, you're going to collect the data and analyze the report. If you have any anomalies in your API responses, this is just a simple example how to detect potential security vulnerabilities in your APIs as an outsider, kinda. Uh, so you're not only focusing on your automated tests, but you let yourself try everything out. From secure by design principles perspective, you would have to look at which of those would apply in this specific situation. So to get clear with that, you would have to think about adopting a risk-driven approach. You would have to think about designing usable security controls, building detect and response security, and then you would apply also the rule of minimizing the attack surface, defending in depth, and embedding continuous assurance. With this set of principles, you can work towards building a series of processes which can harden the security of your application. It means that by doing a risk-driven approach, you can identify the specific risks that would apply to potentially all the endpoints. And one of them would be unauthorized access by specific group of users. Then you can define what controls should exist in your API endpoints, so you can authenticate and authorize the specific users into accessing data or rejecting them from access. Then you can also build a process around detection of unauthorized access from any users to the data. If there was a mismatch, you could get your team notified with that. Then minimizing the attack surface would be through automation and through building specific architecture to make sure that you can defend your organization. Defense in depth comes with a series of layers. So logging, security measures on the API endpoints, making sure that you have specific testing and many other solutions. So this way you can protect your organization. And as a next step, you need to embed the continuous assurance. So you need to repeat the cycle to make sure you don't fall into the cycle of creating new holes, new errors in your code, which would let the potential attackers access to the user data. That's the first part. And let's get to the second part, which is the unauthorized data access by a nurse. So in the UK, there was a case where a nurse did access data of around 3,000 records of patients without a legal basis. She was using the data for the purpose of gossip. And this way, in this situation, the system did not block access to the data, but did allow the nurse to access any data from the outside of the specialty of that specific nurse. In my example, I will show you a simple scanner to detect unauthorized access. So I did use an example coming from the AI, so you can see the whole concept, which is pretty simple, but you could easily include this in your processes. What does it mean? It means that you can collect logs like from CSV or from database, and then you can perform the scans for your dataset. You need to define the window, the context window, for how long you're going to look back when it comes to the dataset. Then you're going to need to see how frequently specific person did access data, which were the patients which were accessed, and what was the reason for accessing the data. Is there any proximity between the nurse and the specific patient where the data was accessed? So, for example, is it a patient who is part of the treatment within that nurse's department? Or is it a patient who would never see some specific nurse from some further away department? The same thing goes to geographical location. So in some situations, there should be no access if you're not in specific location. So this would be another indicator which you can implement to make sure that you can detect unauthorized access to the medical records. With this process, you're going to calculate a so-called suspicion score for the user activities. You can summarize the data and take an action on the specific data sets. So you're going to build the report and see what could be taken, what could be marked as a false positive, and what could be classified as a real threat. I'm not also including here the case where you would add additional controls because sounds obvious, but I'm looking at the aspect of data analysis which you can take here in this situation as an additional security measure. And from this perspective, you would need to also think about secure by design principles. First of all, that's a risk-driven approach where you would notice that data access from non-usual location or from non-usual department should not be happening, and then finding the right level of security controls and detection and response would be the key solution to this problem. Additional reduction in the risk would be connected with minimizing the attack surface. So reducing the number of permissions to the end user would definitely help avoiding such security incidents. And of course, as in previous example, having the continuous assurance would be the part of the cycle which you can run and manage to avoid security issues. So let's summarize this section. To summarize my presentation, I wanted to share that Secure by Design would apply to all layers of the organization. So it would link with external products, internal systems, product dependencies, external suppliers. So you need to think more holistically when approaching the Secure by Design strategy. Secure by Design would require you to be more multidisciplinary, so you can build the right set of competencies to understand the real threats in your organization and all the interdependencies that are happening in the organization. Also, Secure by Design may be implied as a legal requirement from Article 25 of the GDPR. And while it's not directly stated that Secure by Design is part of data protection by design, data protection by default, it does imply a risk-driven approach. It does also imply the need for implementation of technical and organizational security controls. So this way, you can assume that Secure by Design could be potentially a legal requirement. And also, one last thing is that the whole cycle for Secure by Design should be a cycle that repeats, like plan, do, check, act in the ISO norms. I would like to thank you for watching, and I would like to invite you to connecting with me, LinkedIn or in another way, so we can be in touch when it comes to cybersecurity space. Thank you. Have a nice day.